the number one complaint we get from editors when we send out fiction is they say, I couldn't connect with the character. So in other words, they didn't care about the character. The writer was not able, through the magic of prose on the page, engage these editors in the dilemmas and the issues that the character is facing. So the more of yourself and the more real you make those characters, because you put in stuff that matters to you, that's really one of the secrets, I think, one of the big secrets of writing a book that'll sell. So if your character is flat, if your character is a cliche, if your character isn't interesting and you haven't been able to put enough of your heart and soul into that character so that we don't believe in that character, but you've already lost us. You know, we're going to read the first 5 pages of the manuscript and we're going to say, oh my God, this character is so flat. It's a cliche. There's nothing interesting about this character. And we're going to put it down and write you a letter saying, sorry, we failed at the very basic level of character. My dilemma is, it's whenever you have a character, you like I said earlier, you have to invest in the character. So that I think the risk is, if you have too many characters, you're sharing your investment. You only have so much empathy for the characters in the book. And I feel like you want to focus on, you know, at the most 3. This is something very common. You know, most editors and agents will talk about this, and even readers, that if you can't get our interest in the first 20 or 30 pages, we're going to put the manuscript down. We're going to put the book down. So I feel like people do a lot of work in the beginning, early chapters of their books to get you in. And then they do a lot of work later on because they realize that the story has to work itself out in a certain way, and however the conflicts are going to resolve, they do a lot of work there. But what they tend to maybe don't do as much work in is everything from like page 31 to like page 200. And this is a very common thing that I see, where we've got my interest, you've got a great character, and then you kind of coast for a while, and then you're just, whatever the story was before, you know, you can't afford to coast. You can't afford for somebody like me or the editor that I'm sending your book to say, oh, nothing happens. I'm telling people, try to stay under 100,000 words, because that's a size that they can actually sell. There's a problem if it's a debut novel, because most of the publishers have a certain price point that they want to introduce you to the market at, which is usually around $20 to $24. So if your book is that long, they can't make it and price it at that level. They're going to have to charge $35 or $40 if it's going to be a 500 or 600 page book, let's say. So that becomes an issue, because they don't want to introduce you at a price point that nobody's going to buy the book at, because then they've already failed. And by the way, too much description can be a problem. I find sometimes when I get fiction, if it's fantasy or sci-fi, sometimes they will get so involved in the descriptions of the technology or the world, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm losing. You know, you have to focus on the characters always. The world building is important, but you don't have to get into too many details. So if you look at how, in the very beginning of fantasy, you look at how Tolkien did Lord of the Rings, he gave us characters that had things that they needed to accomplish. And then we got to understand the world through their eyes. I always tell people that never to overuse adverbs. Actually, if I see add too many adverbs in dialogues, I take them out, and I'm like, we don't need them. A lot of writers have writing tics. There are lots of grammar things that people repeat, and you know, you don't want to find that you're just doing the same tricks and the same techniques in your writing over and over. You want to use the full range of your craft and your style and your voice as a writer. So in one of the early stages of having a proofreader or an editor look at your work, or even a beta reader, they should be able to catch writing tics, very specific things that you tend to repeat because it's just the kind of thing that you like. The thing that is completely different between fiction and nonfiction, the one thing is really about the audience. Who's the audience? And this is something that when you're working on your, I've seen people fail at this on their nonfiction proposals, is that they've confused the audience. So the number one thing about a nonfiction book is if you know the audience like the back of your hand, you're like, I know, not that everybody knows the back of their hand, I still don't know where that expression comes from. But if you know your audience completely, that is such a big bonus for you. If you don't know your audience, you can't even figure out what language to use. Are they people reading at a grade 8 level, or are they reading at like a university level? Because then you can use completely different language. If they're people that like to that can see things better with images, then you want to include lots of graphs and charts in to show your point.